Understanding money in the circular economy. This training video explains the basics of the money system related to the circular economy. It's particularly for you who have been more focused on the ecological side of the circular economy. Also, even if you're familiar with economics, we're going to explain the connections between the circulation of money and the circulation of materials and their end-of-life use. We hope to give you enough understanding of the subject so you can see where economic policy needs to focus, as well as seeing the business opportunities coming in after environmental regulations tighten. We're going to cover how the money system works, the basics, 3 places where the monetary system and the circular materials economy intersect. For firms, the 4 areas you need to keep under review, and for policymakers, 2 major lessons for policy. It is helpful to think of money as water. You can see all money that is sitting in people's accounts or in their pockets as a whole collected in one giant bathtub. At the end of every month, this bathtub is emptied as people pay bills to corporations, and here for simplicity we include banks as corporations, and to municipalities for their water bills, for example, and to government. Corporations also pay to government and local authorities. During the next month, governments pay to people in the form of wages and benefits. They give money to municipalities and corporations. In turn, municipalities pay their people wages and corporations pay expenses. The bathtub is refilled and the cycle starts again. There are several things to learn from this. Firstly, all money is associated with real people. Real people pay to corporations, which aren't real people, it's true, but these corporations, directly or indirectly, are owned by people. The same applies to governments. If there were no people, there would be no government, because the government represents the people. And for that matter, there wouldn't be any municipalities. So the aim of the system as a whole is to ensure all people are safe and have an adequate standard of living by ensuring that all in the tub, so to speak, have enough money to pay the monthly bills. Secondly, the success of the system is based on money circulating. If money stays in any one place, or if one of the actors attempts to create too large a surplus, this will result in a minus in the rest of the system. This can occur if the government attempts to create a surplus, or it takes out taxes and does not put the money back into circulation. Thirdly, and interestingly, you can replace the arrows to represent not money, but to represent the flow of things money buys. The model still works, but now the arrows represent the flow of goods and services instead. Now this demonstrates to you that the system could work without money. However, society could not function without the exchange of goods and services between people and organizations. From the point of view of the circular economy, we should look for what we like to call the first invoice. This is where money is paid for materials extracted from the earth, as minerals from the lithosphere, or biological materials from the ecosystem in the form, for example, of food, fibre or fuel. Now, in our introductory video to the circular economy, we called these biological and technical nutrients. So, at some point in the life cycle of the nutrient, a first invoice is raised for its sale, usually after extraction. This is an important point in the supply chain. Firstly, it's where the nutrients enter the economy and therefore should be a place that should be monitored and regulated. Secondly, it's at this point that determines the price of the material, and ultimately that determines the price of the product or service it's incorporated in. If it's cheaper to extract nutrients from the ground than to use recycled ones, then business will do just that. Now we should also identify where these nutrients leave the economy, the last invoice. The last payment in a linear economy is often where the material is dumped. Preferably, there is no last payment for technical nutrients. And for biological nutrients, materials, these should be returned in a regenerative way back to the ecosystem. As we said in the previous video, minerals extracted from the earth, the lithosphere, do not have to be dumped in a way that they are unavailable to society. Careful recycling can ensure they stay in the loop forever. For biological nutrients, they can be harvested and returned to the biological cycle in a way that regenerates the ecosystems they come from. For firms, be aware that as regulations tighten, new scenarios will appear. Already now, you can check your accounting system to see if you can quantify in weight and money how much virgin material you purchase in, and how much of the other inputs you use are dependent on virgin material. You could already now be looking for recycled alternatives. You can also check in your expenses for how you account for waste handling. It's a good advice to find ways to separate biological and technical nutrient handling, both physically and in your accounts. You may find costs going up soon, or your waste handler refusing to take your waste if technical and biological nutrients are combined. Now, based on your analysis, you'll be able to identify priorities to be looking at going forward. Two more things. Firstly, identify the recyclability of the materials in your products, and secondly, which should go without saying, the toxicity. We can only expect regulations on recyclability and toxic substances to harden. Now let us look at lessons for policy. Firstly, some levels of debt can be handled by the system, especially government debt. The government returning a surplus is actually removing money from the economy and making it unavailable for circulation. Policy should be directed towards a sufficient circulation of money in the system. Now, to make virgin materials relatively more expensive, a supplementary tariff can be imposed on extraction. In this case, the money collected should return quickly to the economy, preferably directly to consumers, so they can afford sustainable, cyclical alternatives. Secondly, if extracting or polluting are too cheap, then corporations will extract and pollute. So policy should be aimed at making recycling and the circular economy cheaper alternatives. Now, just how to do this is what we will explore in our video about how to apply fiscal policy market-based instruments to driving a circular economy. And for those of you who are interested in the questions that have come up in this video, especially about how money is created and the role of banks, we will be offering a special video on that too. Stay tuned to this channel.